First today, let's talk about plans for a referendum on Britain's EU membership, which have moved one step closer after a government victory in the House of Lords last night. Peers rejected a Labour Party proposal designed to give 16 and 17-year-olds a vote in the referendum, ending the parliamentary back and forth over the EU referendum bill. The government now hopes it will receive royal assent and be passed into law by Christmas. So with that hurdle out of the way, what lies ahead on the road to the referendum? Well, the vote itself will have to take place no later than the 31st of December 2017. Anyone aged 18 or over by the date of the referendum will be eligible to vote, but citizens from other EU countries will not. The question on the ballot paper will be, should the UK remain a member of the European Union? The campaign period for the referendum must be at least 10 weeks long, during which the lead campaign groups, still to be officially designated by the Electoral Commission, will have to abide by strict regulations. The government was defeated in an attempt to scrap the so-called purdah period, meaning that for the 28 days before polling day, ministers won't be able to make any announcements which could influence the result of the referendum question. On Thursday, David Cameron will travel to Brussels to make his case to other EU leaders at a summit of the European Council. The sticking point continues to be the Prime Minister's desire to prevent EU migrants from claiming in-work benefits in the UK for the first 4 years of their stay. No agreement is likely to be reached this week, but European Council President Donald Tusk has said he hopes the summit will pave the way for an agreement by February. But last night, the European Scrutiny Committee, chaired by Conservative MP Bill Cash, said that fundamental reform of the sort David Cameron had envisaged would not be possible without treaty change, itself not possible in time for the referendum. Well, Bill Cash joins us now, and our guest of the day, Chris Mullin, is here too. Bill Cash, hello. Welcome. Your report is really just a reminder, isn't it, that it's a straight appeal to waverers to vote to leave?
It's actually a warning to the voters across the board, because what we're saying is that in order for Cameron to achieve his objectives, it is absolutely essential, if it's going to be irreversible and binding, which is what he said, that there is treaty change. And that means an amendment to the treaty or a protocol. And therefore, for practical purposes, it is absolutely essential that the people who are going to be asked to vote in this historic occasion, do you want to remain in or do you want to leave, that they know that it's meaningful and it's capable of delivery.
Right, but the question before the voters will be, as you said, whether to remain or leave the EU. There will be those, you know, a substantial number, with fixed views one way or another, yes, irrespective of the renegotiation.
Yes. And
that's you, isn't it? Just to clear up, that's where you will say, no matter what David Cameron brings back, you will vote to leave.
I have personally come to the conclusion, having voted yes in 1975, and for the Single European Act, that the Maastricht Treaty and the successive treaties since then have evolved into a situation where we've effectively lost control over the most important parts of how we're governed and all the issues which are so fundamental to our democracy that there is no alternative but to leave in present circumstances.
Right. So anything you say, though, is to some extent, looking at it from a Europhile point of view, tarnished by your thoughts that whatever happens, you would vote to pull out. So this idea that saying the Prime Minister cannot get meaningful change, you're always going to say that.
Well, actually, this is a committee which comes from all parts of the House, and therefore, we agreed the report, and that report was, with some tweaks, was agreed by consensus within the committee. So this is actually an all-party committee, and that is really the basis for this. And it's very, very important that people should know that this was not just from one point of view, it was actually across the board.
Right. I mean, Chris Mullin, Bill Cash is right, though. Without treaty change, there cannot be a fundamental renegotiation. And Number 10 knows that treaty change is not going to happen before the referendum takes place.
Well, I think that is right. I don't think David Cameron ever intended to get into any of this. He decided to have a referendum for very short-term reasons to get Bill and his mates off his back, and in doing so lit a very long fuse. And as a result, we're destined to spend the next 2 or 3 years discussing this, and maybe beyond that, discussing the consequences of this. I come at it from a different view from Bill. I'm in favour of staying in.
At any cost?
Well, I'm in favour of staying in. I don't mind renegotiation taking place. I agree with Bill. I don't think it'll amount to much, but fundamentally I'm in favour of staying in. I asked a businessman in Sunderland the other day what would be the consequences of withdrawal. Bear in mind we have the Nissan car factory in Sunderland. He said an immediate collapse of inward investment.
Well, that's very interesting.
That's a wake-up call, if ever there was.
Actually, Nissan themselves said that they didn't think it was going to make that much difference, as I recall, only a couple of months ago. But I think basically Chris and I agree about the ineffectiveness of a lot of what's been going on in these negotiations so far.
Yes, I think you do agree, broadly on those terms. But let me pick up on a couple of the things, Bill Cash, in the report, saying that the government's renegotiation strategy is reactive and opaque.
Yes. That's what we got from evidence.
But what's opaque about it? I mean, we do know, you may not think they amount to much, but we do know what the Prime Minister is actually demanding. It was clearly set out in the manifesto and it's been repeated in various letters.
Well, let me give you an example. Well, first of all, as far as the letter is concerned, that was the letter that was sent to Mr Tusk. That was only published because of an exchange that I had with a journalist during the course of the press conference. It wouldn't have been made available to the public or to Parliament at all.
But it was just a sort of reprint, if you like, of what was promised in the manifesto.
No, it wasn't. No, it contained a lot of very important questions which had not been advanced before and actually was not going to be published. The other thing, if I may say, is regarding this question of the refusal of the government through the Minister for Europe and the Foreign Secretary to give us a full explanation of where they were on the benefits issue, because we did ask them to send us a copy of what they had in mind, and they didn't do it, and that I regard as very opaque. And by the way, the House of Lords have also been very critical in their committee reports and the evidence they've taken about the extent to which the government has been sufficiently transparent.
Right.
So it is opaque.
Do you agree? Is it opaque? Have you not known what the Prime Minister is negotiating on?
Well, I would hesitate to challenge Bill on the minutiae because Bill is...
Well, you'd be right there, probably, yes.
I'm sure you would be.
But broadly speaking...
yes, I think broadly speaking we know what he's after. I don't think it ever dawned on Cameron for a single moment, until perhaps rather recently, there was any possibility that this could lead to withdrawal. I asked Vince Cable the other day, who is a very thoughtful man, what he thought the chances of withdrawal were. And he said, if you'd asked me a year ago, I'd have said 5%. But if you're asking me now, I'd say about 40%.
Yes.
And that's quite a change. Cameron's very much in favour of staying in, as are the other party leaders.
Well, although he has threatened Brexit, although is that something you actually believe, that he would ever get to a stage where he'd campaign for out?
I think there is a point, actually. I'm not sure I'd put a percentage on it, but I think there is a point at which, when you realise that the things that you've been seeking are simply not going to be accepted by the other member states, and this business of getting treaty change is absolutely fundamental to that. If you can't get it through before the referendum, and the only thing that you can offer the voter is the fact that you've had an international agreement, which itself, according to the former legal advisor to the European Council, wouldn't be sufficient.
Right. I mean, do you think then, bearing in mind there's been resistance from a number of EU leaders on the issue of in-work benefits, do you think he's going to drop that idea?
It looks like it, but in some shape or form. It's very much in the air at the moment. The one thing is absolutely certain, that this has got not just legal implications, but it's political. The other member states, by which I mean those countries in Central and Eastern Europe, are absolutely, they've called it a red line. That's exactly where they are. They've no intention of allowing anything to get through on that.
That's what people say, of course, in negotiations, don't they? And we know red lines are and can be.
This is a practical one, Joe.
Do you think the Prime Minister's gamble about saying he could, in certain circumstances, campaign for out if he doesn't get what he wants is actually going to pay off in terms of pressure on the other EU
Well, firstly,
leaders?
I don't believe him.
No, OK.
Because I think he's in favour, fundamentally in favour. I don't think it ever dawned on him when he lit the fuse that this is how it was going to end up. The consequences are very far-reaching, because if we did, by any chance, vote to come out, the Scots would start demanding another referendum, and probably next time they would vote to go. So David Cameron may go down as the Prime Minister who presided over the breakup of the United Kingdom, which is, I'm sure, is not what he wants.
Bill Cash, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now, it's nearly